Hello and welcome everybody to Data to Dollars by Revenue Expert. Your host Priyanka Jain, and today we'll be talking about improving sales funnel visibility, which is a big topic and a big pain point for many of our GTM leaders and organizations in general, growth organizations in general. So today I have with me a panel of experts to shed some more light on this. And welcome everybody. Welcome Matt, Kevin, and Kristen. Let's have you guys introduce yourself. Matt, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. So Matt Hudson, I'm the founder of Startup to Scale. So I'm a company that works with startups that are transitioning from founder-led sales into kind of that growth phase where they need to build out the organization. So creating that infrastructure for them, process tools, people, that sort of thing. So it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Kevin?
Hey, everybody. Hey, team here on the call. Great to meet you all. I'm Kevin Nothnagel. I run a company called Solas Partners, where I'm working as a fractional CRO with earlier stage startups currently, but I help support organizations from, roundabout founder-led sales up until A or B rounds, where they are bringing in somebody full-time to do revenue leadership, revenue operations. My career has been in startup sales leadership. I was at Clockwise for 2.5 years before this as the VP of sales, product board as a sales leader, and then some bigger companies too, some time at Facebook and Google and Dropbox. So it's been a good journey, about 20 years so far in technology sales, and excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Kristen.
Hi, all. Pleasure to meet everyone. My name is Kristen Broadley. I am the founder of Accelerated Advisors, co-founder actually, and I work with small fintechs in the mortgage and servicing industry, helping them gain exposure, grow, develop, and move from that founder structure into kind of that accelerated growth cycle. So, it's mortgages, it's servicing, it's fintech, and it is exploding. So it's a good place to be.
Great. Yeah. Today's market tells a different story, but yesterday's market. But yeah, so here I am, Priyanka. I'm the founder and CEO of Aryng. We are a data science consulting and training company. We are focused on the consulting side. We are focused on growth companies, growth startups, 30 million plus organizations in fintech, SaaS, in consumer apps, e-commerce. And we are also focused on other side of our business is focused on data literacy for large Fortune 1000 companies. And really, really excited about our today's topic, which is all about sales funnel and sales funnel visibility. So let's dive right into the topic. Before we talk more about where we want to see ideally, I want to talk about where it is today. What are the biggest challenges in your guys' mind on sales funnel, the visibility into how your sales funnel is doing?
I don't know who wants to start. I'm sure we've all got our own thoughts, but I can give mine. I think it starts at the very beginning within the demand gen group. I think there's some gaps there, and I think it starts with lead flow and understanding what is truly an op and how that's defined. And I think until that's determined, I don't think you can really predict or even start to try to forecast. So I think you've got revenue that's at various stages with no real validity to it. I mean, it's easy to say I've got a deal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have all the components of it. So I think the biggest thing is setting the structure on what does that process look like from demand gen all the way through, and what are some of the steps that need to be followed. So that's just my thought on it.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, it's such a good question. It's one I've honestly thought about for a lot of years because of the human element of the question, where are people using systems right to put information needed in the system to provide accurate assessments of where deals are at and what in the process? Or are they somebody who is going to show up and put their best foot forward? Oh, this deal is definitely going to close because they want to look good in a forecast call or in a meeting where their bosses are all there inspecting their deals in their pipeline. But meanwhile, they don't have an executive sponsor. They don't have a clear next step. So I think a lot of times the human element in conjunction with the machine and needing to input all the information on every deal. I had a CEO once that I was working with. he wanted us to collect something like 300 data points in our sales process. And I was like, that's just not possible. You can't ask somebody 300 questions and not bore them to death with just question after question, which doesn't even drive the deal forward in any interesting ways. So I think it's the fact that these systems are set up in a way that's still a lot of data entry for highly paid salespeople. And we need to reach a future state where, I mean, frankly, AI is doing more of that ingestion of the status of different deals and sales processes to really close some of these visibility gaps. Because right now, I was the same way when I was a salesperson. You just couldn't count on me to keep my data updated because it's just too much work if you're managing a lot of deals.
I think to tag on to what, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm gonna piggyback off that, and then we'll,
Absolutely.
pop it over to Matt. But the simplicity is everything. You don't have to have 20 steps. You need to have 5. If you want to have visibility into your cycle, your timeframes, your process, and your execution, then having simplistic inputs and strategy can get you so much further. You can have that top-down visibility. You can have that bottom-up execution. And so you don't have a million steps. You don't have a million data points. You have, clear, concise processes, programs, foundational structure, so that folks can feel confident and certain in their process, in their execution. And for oversight, you have that clear visibility and you have those clear expectations on how you get through that process flow. So simplicity to me is everything.
So, so from what I'm hearing, you're saying, what you're saying, Kristen, is what you're experiencing is that people are complicating it. Kevin was kind of alluding to it with the 300 metric points, that people are complicating. At the end of the day, salespeople are highly paid salespeople, are really good at what they do, but they want to just close the deal. They don't want to be tracked or tracking. However, if you don't track it, then you don't have a benchmark, you don't have a way to improve it. So there is like the balance of, yes, I don't want to get in the way of you closing the deal, yet if we don't necessarily do some of the basic fundamental tracking. And to your point, if where we are headed to, potentially AI can do a meta tracking, which is instead of a salesperson saying, I talked to this and this person and manually entering stuff in, say, Salesforce or any other CRM, there are systems in place which is automatically tracking not only that aspect, but also even the sentiment, or what happened in the call, or what was the objection, or whatever those meta are, and then potentially even have a reactive solutioning to it, pop up something for the salesperson to talk to the prospect, because they have a little bit of more of intelligence. That is like somebody, it's a sidekick, it's an assistant that is coming in. So that's future. That's something we are making. Matt, you were trying to add something when.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, Kevin alluded to it as far as, being as a salesperson, you want to say, you've got a deal, and as a sales leader, part of the forecasting process is to pressure test and kind of get to the meat of, is it really a deal? And I think part of that is, you may ask a rep, do we have next steps, or what are the next steps? I'm going to reach out to, but digging in a little bit deeper as far as the specifics around what, not to overly complicate it. So I agree, Chris and I, keep it simple, but I think if you don't pressure test it, then you've got an inflated funnel that likely won't be revenue. And I think it all goes down to, again, the steps that you go through and the exit criteria of each stage. In order for it to go from negotiate to whatever, I need to have at least these things, and I need to be able to have that conversation with the seller. If I can't, then it's not there yet. Doesn't mean that it's not a deal, but I just think it's a little bit more on the pressure testing side.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 things you both said that I find really interesting. One, 5 steps only in the sales process. Like, don't make it too complicated, because then, people won't even know where they are on the map. And like, no deal goes in a straight line either. They're highly complex. So I think that point around exit criteria is also crucial. I've seen so many people outline their sales process and they go stage by stage what each stage is, but they don't tell you how to move to the next stage. So having that listed out exit criteria is essential. And then you're getting data points on each stage. You're getting how many people advance stage to stage. And if you put that into your CRM, suddenly it's a Salesforce report away, what your win rate is by stage, how likely you are to hit certain milestones or metrics in your future forecast, because you know how far along each deal is and how many more days is probably left based on mathematical averages. So I think those 2 points were great by the both of you.
That's great. So I'm going to put you all on spot because you guys gave me 5 stages. I'm going to ask you 5 key metrics. What are each of yours favorite 5 key metrics that you keep an eye on to assess the health of the sales funnel?
I don't know if we're going in the same order. I'll let somebody else go first. I don't want to always jump in.
I'm trying to get to 5 in my head. I may just
Same, man. You go ahead.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I'm there either.
The things I look at in general are like each week on a pipeline or forecast review, I'm looking for a few things. I'm looking for what's newly entering the pipeline. How many new deals do we have? What is the average size of those deals? What is the source of those deals? So that I can start to figure out, okay, these deals are inbound. That means they're probably hotter. My inbound days to close is something like 30 days, whereas my outbound days to close is something like 60 days. So I may have a deal I need to keep an eye on progressing through the funnel sooner rather than later. I like to look at, I do a lot of B2B SaaS product sales. So a lot of our products are still seat-based. That's evolving. It's becoming a model where AI is really changing how B2B SaaS products are priced away from seat-based models, more towards consumption models. But I'm always keeping an eye on scope of a deal as well. How many potential seats are we talking about? What plan might they be interested in? What would be the average revenue per user or per account that I might be getting from that deal? And yeah, I mean, all the classics too. I mean, people have maybe sort of walked away a little bit from activity tracking just because top of funnel activity really doesn't translate to bottom of funnel action a lot of times. But there are a lot of old gong studies that speak to one truth in sales, which is like the more you have back and forth with customers, either on the call itself or over email as the deal progresses, the more likely you are to close. I don't think that's a radical insight at all from them, but it's true, right? If you are sending emails into the void or into the ether and not getting any responses or inbound emails on your deals, it's probably dying out on you, or somebody left the company, or there's a change in strategic priority for your project. So I don't know if I got to 5 with that, but those are some of the things that I keep an eye on weekly as I review new deals entering the pipe and how things are progressing.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nature of sales has changed over the last few years. I think, what used to be volume game, to your point, you can't really play that game, but it doesn't mean you don't track metrics either. So you have to have some sort of activity. I think it's more relationship based activity. So whether that be connection requests or whatever through LinkedIn, a couple of the things that I normally ask, in a forecast review, not just, have we gotten in front of the executive buyer, but where do we sit on the list of priorities? Every company's got issues. They've all got a problem to solve. And there's a list of those at the beginning of the year that's put on a budget. And you need to know where you land on that list. If you're number 9 out of 10, it doesn't matter how much you can solve their problems. You're not going to, because the budget's not there. So, I guess the obstacle at that point is, okay, how do I get up on that list? Like, how do I pressure the pain to get to number 2 or 3 to where I can be? Another one that I like to use is like, who's going to be the person that can derail this at the very end? Because there's always that person. It doesn't matter if you're talking to a CEO or not, the board can be that person. So making sure that they're, I guess, checking for the potential pitfalls on the back end. And if they don't know the process, obviously buying process should be kind of a standard. I would hope that's something that's standard across the board, but take it one step further and go, okay, who is actually that last person that can say, you know what, we're not going to do this. I think I only got 3 in there, but that's all I got for right now. I mean, I've got plenty more, but I don't have any on my list.
It'll be good. It'll be a good list when we're done. I think the industry that I'm in, it's very fragmented. So you have organizations that are doing tens of billions of dollars annually in revenue, and then you have organizations that are doing, 100 million. And so, and they're all going through the same process. So the vendor model, one, you have to identify kind of your tranche, because again, it's so fragmented that you have to find the range of companies that you want to work with. And depending upon the size of the organization, depending upon, their tech spend, like you said, priorities, it can take weeks to months in order to move those loans through. So kind of when you're thinking about your sales funnel and you're tranching out your clients and those end users, understanding the time frame in order to get those things done, making sure that you're getting to decision makers, especially if they're embedded deep in a large organization. That's very important. Understanding their market needs, which tracks similarly, but expectations are different dependent upon scale. And so kind of measuring those, to your point, understanding priorities for a smaller organization, it could be, like I said, 2 weeks. For another organization, we're not going to look at this until 2025. So knowing where that is, so you can continue to build those relationships over that time. They're going to stay in that prospecting bucket just a little bit longer, but you want to make sure that you're measuring those touch points so that you can continue to grow that relationship. So when they're ready, you're there. So I'm looking at timeframes. I'm looking at measuring the type of organization, how they interact with us and with the market, and actively measuring the continued relationship build over the course of time until they're ready to engage.
Got it. So what I heard from three of you were falling in the two distinct bucket. One is the metrics that we track, that we would want to track to understand the robustness of our sales funnel, which is some of the things I think, Kevin, you were talking about, which was, where the net new deal, ASP of the deal, what are the sources, what are the different stages where they're in different stages, may potentially conversion rate, which I don't think you guys actively talked about it, but the conversion rate between these stages, let's say they're only 5. And then obviously the last one that we are doing all of this work to improve our close one or, a percentage one ratios, right? So that's the visibility of the sales funnel. And then you guys actually already moved to the next question, which I was coming to, which was great. You talked about the qualification criteria to move people from one stage to another, where you were talking about how important the solution that you're providing, that problem, how important it is for the prospect, or and some of the other aspects of qualification, their budget and so on and so forth. So I think those are two different kind of lists, and very, very important lists. But I just wanted to kind of separate those two out. That brings me, and so you were, Kristen, talking about fragmentation. And in general, I have noticed we have clients who are we have like one client which is in a real estate CRM system, and they have a very fragmented clientele that they are selling to, and we are building their entire sales and marketing funnels and dashboards and more advanced stuff. And one of the things we have noticed about that sales funnel is that there are people who are 5-people shop, meaning the clients they're selling to, they're SMB, really SMB. They're 1-people shop in there, and there are large conglomerates as well. So it is the funnel that they are filling in with is highly modular or modal in statistical terms. They're very different. They're very heterogeneous. So how important is customer segmentation? And I'm going to tie this to customer behavior. So how important is for you to understand customer segmentation as they are moving through the sales funnel? And how can data help to understand customer segmentation and customer behavior, how customers are moving through as you guys look at your funnel?
I think that's the ultimate question. I think that question is everything. I think when you're in a world of high velocity transactional sales, you're looking at potential one-call closes you want to know, or what's the batting average of that seller on that call? Are they winning at 60, 70%? Or are they winning at 20%? Because at the end of the month, after doing 50 transactions, that difference in win rate is going to be enormous in terms of the impact on the bottom line. And you probably want to move on from that rep who's at 20% and, you know, keep finding more that look like your 60 to 70% win rate rep. But the transactional sale is so different in terms of skill set, training needs, abilities of the person involved, how they run their deals, how they run their day, even what they wake up in the morning thinking about. Like if they're an enterprise seller and they're not doing deep enterprise research, reading all of the financial reports that each company that they're selling to is making to the SEC, and spending time building out a massive pool of stakeholders internally, getting to know 20, 30, 40 people internally at the bigger company over the course of half a year to a year, or even longer. If the ticket price is into the millions, those projects take much longer even. You need to know data points that vary a lot. You know, there might not be an average deal velocity in the enterprise because there's so few deals in the first place. You can't get a meaningful statistical average when there's only 3 deals a year. One might be really fast, one might be really slow, and suddenly your mean and your median look totally different. And having this instrumentation, though, is everything, and making sure you have the right profile of people in the right seats too, doing the work according to each segment is really essential as well. So I think that question's everything. And, you know, I at the very basic level, I usually do a small, mid, and enterprise segments, but I've even seen more segments than that. I've seen 4, sometimes 5 segments at different companies. But, you know, if your product is a solution that can work for a lot of companies of a lot of different sizes, you need that instrumentation ASAP. And Kristen, to your earlier point too, like sometimes you don't want to go after everybody. A lot of times you don't, especially if you're a startup. You want to pick your niche and your tranche, as you said, and just start to target those accounts. And honestly, when you start to see bigger accounts, maybe you qualify some of those deals out. Maybe you walk away from some of those deals that your organization just isn't ready or doesn't want to support. I think that's vital. So segmentation is everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think when you're building a sales team, even you are going to have different category, I guess, characteristics of salespeople and how they are as far as sellers. So can somebody really go deep and wide, you know, and actually multi-thread in an account? Transactional sellers that are typically, you know, younger in their career, don't necessarily have that experience or knowledge of how to do that. So I think it's important to not only use the data for forecasting, but also in staffing, rather than moving people out. Maybe it's moving them into a more relevant role. I think it was to Kristen's point earlier, as far as being able to predict, I guess, long-term, you have to be able to, if you've got 2 big deals, enterprise deals that you know are going to take 18 months, how do I fill the gaps in between? I'm going to use that transactional business. So being able to understand the data points of, you know, is it an 18-month sales cycle? And sometimes you won't know. To your point earlier, you may only have a couple of examples, but I think trying to leverage in as much data as you can to be able to forecast out the business, I think I think we're a question we're all trying to get the answer to. And I don't know that there is a magic bullet, but if anybody has it, I'll certainly write it down.
I'd love one of those too. No, Kevin, Matt, I think you're right. It's everything. Understanding your clients. You know, Matt, you talked about filling the gaps. As you structure your organization, you're identifying a variety of talent. Obviously, the folks that have those enterprise ties, they're embedded in the industry, they understand it. They are obviously going to require greater autonomy, and they are going to require, you know, greater, they're going to have a greater fixed cost. And so bringing folks up in the organization, helping them grow to that level, and allowing them to do the more tactical outreach as they continue to learn and grow and fill those gaps. I think it's so important. Knowing your client, knowing those individuals, enterprise, and understanding what their needs are and how they respond is so important, can help drive those sales. It's something that's measurable. The execution, you know, you talk about, you know, 60% close rate for those, you know, for those transactional, like those are other things that you can continue to leverage to identify opportunity, identify growth, and then kind of weaponize that sales team to help create those roadmaps for success.
Yeah, those are great points. I was also I got the experience of a fintech client who they are a payment orchestration company, and so they are a payment mechanism behind a lot of different kinds of company. And when we did a segmentation of their pipeline, what we realized, we identified 6 or 7 very critical personas, and we realized some of them were like one persona specifically moved the fastest through the system, even through the sandbox. They were really adept at moving through the system, but they were really small in number. And then there was another one which was like 20% of the ICP that was really large, but often got stuck in one of the stages. Either they got stuck in demo or they got stuck in sandbox. So they were like actually distinct differences between these different personas. Like there was another segment which was gaming companies, largely gaming companies or digital companies, and they moved through the system in a fairly different way. Their ASP, as you can imagine, a gaming company, their ASP was smaller in amount. So I mean, even just a simpler analysis of their ICP and then seeing how they move through their funnel, they almost look like distinct funnels. They like that one funnel had nothing to do with the other, almost, with even time to close, with where people were falling off, and the sources where they were coming from. They almost look like this funnel has nothing to do with it. That was the distinctness of the ICP. And so to me, that was probably, I would say, the first time the segmentation. While segmentation, we often see more so specifically for P2C companies for marketing, we do a fair bit of segmentation, but that was the first time for a B2B company as we were developing their ICPs and later on their pricing and packaging, we realized, oh my God, there's such a big difference between who's coming in the funnel, to what sources, and how they're moving through, what are their different needs. And as a result of understanding those very distinct persona and how they are moving through, we were able to recommend different skill sets for SDRs. How some of those segments needed more handholding. The others actually just like, leave me alone. I'm going to play in the sandbox. Give me not only 15 days, give me 30 days to play, and we are good to go. Give me time to play and I'm good to go. So they had different needs, essentially. And as a result of understanding their different needs, you could do different things and improve your efficiency, sales funnel efficiency, or one rate. So
I think you could even go as far as pricing packages too, right? So we at a company I was working with, it ended up getting to a point where we had to create new product packaging because we had such a very different customer on your mid-market versus your enterprise. So we had to go back to the product team and say, okay, guys, we're going to have to strip it down because we've got to have it low enough to where these mid-market companies, they want the product, they need the product, but they can't afford enterprise pricing. So I think, to your point, I think you could almost segment it out and create a whole new group, whether that be pricing people, the whole process, really, because it is going to be different.
Exactly. That's exactly what we ended up doing, because that market, that pricing didn't even work for certain folks, or their needs were different even in the stages of the market, of the funnel. So yeah, it's just so, I mean, knowing your customer and knowing their needs and knowing that they're distinctly different can make all the difference in how they want to move through the system. Now, obviously, I'm talking a little bit. I'm talking about the market that I'm talking to, which we mostly serve, has 4,000 deals flowing in a month, right? So like, it's not deals, potential flowing into the month. So that's a different volume. I think as a fraction leader, you might be seeing a smaller amount of deals coming in. So the leverage of the data is not as much yet, but yet it's the beginning of that nuanced thinking about your customer, or your prospect that can make or break the deal. So great. To that end, we were already talking about segmentation. We talked a little bit about personalization, or alluded to it, that depending on what their needs are, we might be able to serve the prospects, how they move through it, at what pace they want to move through it, or how we can help accelerate them through the process, using personalization. I want to talk a little bit more about what are some of the ways in which you guys have helped, or you've seen, to curb drop-off rates. Your prospect is flowing in, and these are good prospects. We are well qualified after post qualification. I mean, post the time that that you don't want to drop them, that these are good leads. What do you do? What are the things you've done to reduce drop-off rates at different stages?
I am.
I think, go ahead.
You can kick us off this time. I grabbed the
No,
last one.
Kevin, please, after you.
Okay. Well, I'm a huge believer in sales being the process of guiding a prospect on the journey from being a prospect to being a customer. It's not some magic turn of phrase that I'm dropping on a call that's going to get somebody to pull out their checkbook and buy 100 licenses of whatever I'm selling. It's the experience I give them as they engage with my company. Am I giving them an excellent experience? Am I a chef in a Michelin-starred kitchen with perfect timing and elegance and good greetings? I mean, it's this journey that you're taking them on, that when they choose to engage you, and you want them to want to take that next call. But you also want to see them do their homework, right? If they get off a call with you and they won't commit to a next call, or they won't give you a piece of information that you need to take the deal a step further, well, then they might just be tire kickers, right? And you have to sort of change your approach to some of those and maybe nurture them a little more than try to actively engage, or feel bad when they blow you off inevitably. And so the biggest trick I have towards that end is just, okay, I'm giving them a journey. I'm giving them a map of that journey. So on the first call, I'm showing them the buying process. I'm saying, what are the stages we're going to go through together and when? Ideally, I'm even mapping all those out with dates behind them and putting it all into, let's say, a deal room. There's a lot of technology now where you can get customers and salespeople collaborating in the same space. There's a Cord and other tools out there that are helping people to work together as collaboration teams on deals. Buyer and prospect and customer now can all work together and work with your sales team, where you can bring in other stakeholders. Maybe you want an executive top-to-top engagement. You put that on the map, the evaluation plan, and you're on the first call or two filling that map in together. You're putting timelines in place, stakeholders. You're gathering up all the other information is going to come up. You look super organized when you do that. It's like, oh, you already pulled all the legal documents and the MSAs together. And wow, your security trust center is really nice. Thanks for pulling that together. So you're trying to make yourself a resource. You're trying to make all of these resources seem, really good and useful to the buyer. And like everything's there when they need it, and you're there when you need them. And a lot of times buyers too, they want to be in control of the process. So that gives the impression too that, like, look, I'm giving you the map. We're working on this together and you're in control. Like, okay, you need to move that call out. Great. Let's do it a week out later. And that's going to move all these other calls too. But throughout that whole process, what you're getting as a salesperson too is a very clear picture of when you're going to close that deal, because you're making all the necessary steps together. And then that close date is almost like a wedding date. You put the date on the calendar in your map and first couple calls, and then you're working backwards from there to get the whole big thing planned and making sure it's a good party with all the steps done ahead of when that signature needs to come in. And you have both clarity on both sides, clarity for you as the seller, clarity for the buyer on what you're working towards, and then you're working together towards that. So that's my biggest trick in that regard. And when people are collaborative on maps, I think it's a good potential partnership, and you're going to win a lot of those deals. And you measure the deals too that you put a map in place on, and suddenly you're winning a lot of those deals more than you would without that clarity given to the prospect.
Yeah,
So I think
he stole exactly what I was going to say. So no, I mean, engagement, I think, is probably, I mean, to your point, it's something that people don't like to be sold to at the end of the day. So you have to figure out a way to build the relationship to where they're selling themselves. You're going to have the user or the person that desires the tool that you're talking to. They're going to be gung-ho for it, but it's about building the mutual action plan. Like, okay, who do we present this to, and let's build that together. And do, to your point, Kevin, absolutely have them contribute. Like one of the things that I've seen done in the past is when creating that mutual action plan, after every call, like, okay, here's, I'm going to send this to you. I'm going to update everything that we talked about today. Please feel free to add anything that I might have missed, correct anything that I might have heard wrong. Have them be a part of the process. So that way, when it is time to sell it to whoever, you've already got their buy-in. And it's hard for them at that point to back out or to say, no, that's not what I agreed to, if they've been a part of the process the whole time. So I agree. I mean, the engagement is key for sure.
Yeah, I'll add another, leg to that stool too on the engagement. It's so important. I agree with you both. You have to have a champion in the org, right? You have to have someone that feels the same level of passion so that when, you aren't invited to rooms, that they are advocating for your product or process. You also need to leverage the resources within your organization. You are not going to be their only point of contact, and it's a short-term relationship. Hopefully it's a really fruitful one. But if you can engage with the individuals in your organization that are going to take over that relationship, and they're very strong in their client engagement, you start creating relationships there, you're more likely to, I think, I know, move faster because they're engaging those end users as well. So you're building an expanded relationship. If you have referrals, something that works really well is, you get permission and a laundry list of folks who are advocates for your organization that are using your program or process. Hey, call these people up, they'll talk to you. And then you have outside advocacy. So, all of those things, building relationships, in the sales cycle, with those champions, and then leveraging the folks that are really good at what they do in executing for the end users and building relationships with the end users, bringing them in early and often helps kind of, close that time frame too.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because there's like specific things you can do at specific points too. When you feel like a deal might be going in the wrong direction, let's say because you're missing a piece of product functionality. Okay, well, maybe my chip is I'm going to bring in our VP of product and our visionary leader of our roadmap to have a discussion with the people that have those concerns. But, I only want to schedule that if it means we might be able to make some commitments on our side and on your side to get through this. Or maybe it's a customer referral, right? Like, you build up your stable of happy customers, but you don't want to waste their time. So maybe you're going to bring them in when you're getting to a point where you're close, but that referral call will be what pushes them over the edge. So I really like that point, Kristen, because there's almost like different tactical chips you can use too when deciding how to get the engagement you want and who you want to bring in, because you're certainly right. If you're the only one with a relationship with the organization you're selling to, and it's not a highly transactional deal, it's anything more, than even a small business or mid-market deal, like, you're going to lose that deal. So get everybody involved. Sales is a team sport. We've all said and heard that line, I'm sure, before. And I stand by it. I mean, it's one of the main truths in sales is that this is a partnership between companies more than people. But, to your point too, like, people buy from people as well. And you should be, making that a great experience from them as you engage all the other people within your organization and theirs.
Yeah, I like the customer reference thing, and then introducing, especially executive leadership. Again, to Kristen's point, you're not going to be the only person within your org that they're going to engage with. So doing that early, you do have to watch how often you engage. I think that's actually where you put some of that in the exit criteria, right? So maybe it's not, we can't introduce you to the CEO or whoever until you reach a certain part of the sale, because we can't, utilize their time. Same thing with a customer reference. Let's not give customer reference calls out until they reach negotiation or beyond, because that's something we've got to maintain those relationships. So you're both spot on. Great points.
Love it. Love it. We are coming to the close of the hour, but I do want to take a few minutes for each of you. If you could share, what are your top 3 key advice or key takeaway that you would like to share with the audience on this subject of sales funnel visibility and improving the overall sales funnel process, tracking, visibility, close won ratio, or whatever on that topic. And also, while you talk about that, just in the interest of time, also talk about how folks can how folks can find you. What are your coordinates?
So I'll start. Mine'll probably be pretty simple. What gets measured gets improved. Put systems in place, create, simplicity and aggregation of data so that you can measure, how your sales cycle functions. Relationships are everything, right? Within your own org, within, the organizations that you are looking to help. And then the relationships with the end users, approaching sales, I think Matt, you said it, you probably said it best when you're talking about, these are companies that are, going to be working with companies. These are partnerships, and everyone does better when you structure, strong partnerships, and that's foundational. It starts at the first call. And then, so Kristen Broadley, acceleratedadvisors.com. And that's how I can be reached. And again, I'm in the mortgage space. I'm in the fintech space. And by the way, when stock markets go down, there's a flight to quality to bonds, and so mortgage rates go down. So just a little tip for everyone. So if you are in a higher interest rate loan and you're looking for something a little lower, when the stock market and when equities struggle, mortgage rates actually do pretty well. So something to think about.
A lot of Google searches already for refinancing, I think, even in the last day. So I saw a LinkedIn post about it. I know what I'm doing today, calling my mortgage broker. So I hear that for sure. And, it turns out that was a big blip too with the Nikkei. The Nikkei was back up 10% today. Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe it. This is not, it's volatility is what it is. We're not used to that in the last few years, I think. And it's normal though, turns out. And I'm Kevin Nothnagel. You can find me on LinkedIn if you can spell my name, Nothnagel. I'll challenge you to find me, but love to connect. And my takeaways are really, you just can't start early enough to get the visibility you need into your funnel. So do the work up front. Partner with a great data team, data leaders. Aryng's a great firm to work with if you're looking to implement a lot of these processes around having metrics that marry a lot of what we talked about today, the quantitative data, time to close, win rates by stage, with the qualitative data. What is the persona? What is the industry of the buyer? The moment you have all that information, especially if you're an early stage startup, you might have these awakenings that we've discussed today about who really is your ideal customer, who has the pain points that you're trying to solve. What are those pain points even in the first place that are attracting people to your website, helping them to find you, helping them to get into your sales process. So for me, I think just investing early, those investments you make in operational processes, revenue operations are going to pay off for so many years to come. I see organizations get to it so late and then it's too late. They're having to back out a lot of legacy tech, almost like process and tech debt, to get to the insights that they need. So if you want to be able to tell investors confidently as you're trying to raise your next round, your round after that, even the shape and state of your pipeline, get that data in place now. Go beyond the spreadsheet, get a CRM, start to instrument these processes. But still, we've talked throughout this time just about keeping it simple, right? At the same time, it's possible to do both, to have a good, elegant process that's smooth, serves your needs from a strategy perspective, and is easy to execute for the people that you have in the field.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, I think to Kevin's point, excuse me, sales, the landscape has changed. So I think the foundational piece of it has to be key. I mean, startups tend to, hit that growth phase, and the first thing they want to do is go hire a sales team so that way they can take advantage of it, which makes sense. But on the back end of those processes, and I guess the environment's not built for it, then you've got a bunch of salespeople that don't really have any direction to go through. And I think you're chasing a funnel or a pipeline or a forecast that maybe isn't real. Nowadays, your funnel's not going to be as large as what it once was, 5 years ago. You're going to have a much leaner funnel, which means you've got to pay much closer attention to those deals and understand, where are they falling out and why. And I think the data points that we've been talking about this entire time, I think those are key in order to successfully have, a deal go through the entire sales stages. So, I mean, I think it's been a great conversation. I think all great topics. As far as I can be reached, Matt at startuptoscale.us. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. My name's actually pretty easy to spell. It's Hudson. So Kevin, sorry, but
Lucky.
but no, but it was,
Great.
I appreciate you having us for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I am going to ask one more question. I wanted to ask, but I didn't know if I had time. I'm going to go back and the team, Aditi, please change the order. Last question before the question I just asked. I wanted to ask you, each of you, if you could talk about your favorite CRM and any other favorite sales tool for sales funnel tracking or instrumentation.
You know, CRM and sales tools are kind of becoming one in a lot of ways. I think in an era of AI, I'm really excited about what AI is bringing into sales tools and CRM. So there's whole new CRM categories coming up of AI CRMs. I haven't used as many of those yet. Right now with the two of my clients, we're using HubSpot. So HubSpot's been wonderful, super easy to configure. You know, Salesforce, I'm a power user of it, but I'm not an administrator. And so you know, Salesforce does have a little heavier load in terms of building out an effective process in it, but it's gold standard when it comes to enterprise customability. But HubSpot's been great for a lot of my clients. And I'm excited for products like Grain. Grain is building technology that will help listening to sales calls and actually adhering to a sales process and giving you coaching on calls based on how your process is being executed by your team using AI. And you can search across your calls to see what pain points exist within customers. I love what call recording technology is allowing us to do in terms of getting insight that can become data points and actually be systematized in a way that takes all those data entry problems out of the question that we were talking about earlier. So the moment technology just allows salespeople to do what they're great at, kick their feet up on their desk, take people to steak dinners again. If you're a vegetarian, you know, we'll get something else. But I think it's been awesome to see that AI is really letting salespeople do what they're excellent at and hopefully removing some of those, you know, legacy hatred I think that a lot of salespeople have towards CRM and just kind of getting that out of the way.
Great.
So HubSpot is the one that I've worked with that has worked for clients in the past. But you know, to Kevin's point, I can't wait to see what's next. I think there is an inflection point coming. You know, Matt talked about this a little earlier about having to have that, you know, foundational information. And the only way CRMs function, and I go into organizations where they switch CRMs, and it really is it's a data integrity problem. It's a foundational problem. It's the fact that they started with it as a toy instead of a tool, and so it doesn't function for them. So then they go from CRM to CRM, and they never fix the underlying issue, which is you have to have clean and a commitment to data so that you can leverage it correctly. But you know, Kevin, to your point, AI is moving quickly. I mean, it's at the speed of light. It feels like what exists today is not going to exist next year. And so the facilitation, the virtual assistants, all these things that are coming into play and coming to market is going to make this function very different in the future. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think to Kristen's point, the exciting part about it is a year from now, whatever tools we're using probably won't be what we're using then. From a CRM, I've done both. Obviously, in the larger enterprise space, Salesforce was typically. HubSpot's been more recent, and honestly, the interaction and usability from a user perspective. Being able to pull reports, that kind of thing. It seems to be easier to navigate. I think call recording tools are absolutely critical. Not for coaching necessarily, but salespeople don't document well. I mean, that's just the reality of it. They don't take notes. They hear what they want to hear, which is great. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to measure your business, being able to hear the actual, you know, hot topics or the red flags maybe that they didn't write down or didn't want to write down, I think are key in being able to manage your business effectively and predict it out. So I think it's exciting. Tools are going to be changing drastically. But I think knowledge is key. So watching the data points that we've been talking about this entire time and making sure that you've got a a pulse on what those are, it's the only way you can manage your business. So
Right. So I heard, surprisingly, I heard HubSpot, Salesforce. You did mention Grain, Kevin. I was expecting for some, some out there tools to hear more of them.
I have
But
some
it
more.
seems like the
yeah, I mean, Course AI, Gong. I mean, I could throw out some names, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's more about, to me, it's not necessarily the tool itself. It's about the functionality of it, because
it always
there's
is.
so
It
many,
always is.
so many
But it's
different tools out there.
but it's not done
Pogio's
until
been
we talk
cool.
about tools.
Yep.
I will.
Yep.